family believed a big lie, assaulted me, and kicked me out of the house. My intention in sharing this is to vent and release some of the stress I've been carrying. As I mentioned in the post, this story has something of an ending, so to speak. Once again, I apologize for any possible mistakes or if there are gaps in the story. If you have any questions or doubts, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm not exactly sure how much I'll be able to cover in this post, but I'll try to explain as much as I can to avoid confusion. The purpose of this post is to provide context about what happened between me and my family, so that in the next one, I can go deeper into our reconciliation. This story actually began 25 years ago, in 1998, when I was 17 years old. I'm currently 42. It was during that time that I met my ex-wife Melissa. We both lived in a small town in central Mexico. Back then, I was in high school. During my first semester, I became friends with a classmate named Lily. From the beginning, Lily and I got along really well, and we quickly developed a close friendship. One day, during one of our usual conversations, Lily invited me over to her house to hang out, and I agreed. When we arrived at her house, we spent some time doing schoolwork and then started playing video games. A few minutes later, the front door opened, and shortly after, a girl who looked a lot like Lily walked in. It turned out that Lily had a twin sister named Melissa. After seeing her for a few minutes, a small conversation began between the three of us. Eventually, Melissa and I ended up talking alone, and it turned out to be a really nice first meeting. I'd be lying if I said I remembered every detail, but to sum it up, after that first meeting, Melissa and I stayed in touch. We started spending more and more time together, going for walks, and gradually we developed feelings for each other. We went on a few dates and officially started dating when we were both 19. It's important to mention that Melissa has 2 disabilities. She's been blind since birth. She was diagnosed with congenital blindness, and at the age of 16, she was diagnosed with cardiac arrhythmia, meaning her heart rhythm is irregular, and there were times when her heart rate would drop dangerously low. I'll admit that, at first, it was challenging to adjust to being with someone with a disability. In Lily's case, she only had mild myopia. By choice and with the support of Melissa's family, I began studying medicine and took some courses and training so I could care for Melissa's physical and mental well-being. At the time, I was actually studying accounting, but I was offered the opportunity to take some courses at a medical center, so I accepted. Most of the training focused on how to handle Melissa's cardiac condition. But I did all of it willingly, because I loved her. After all, we do everything we can to keep the people we love happy and healthy. Back then, Melissa was what many would call perfect. She was physically beautiful and attractive, but what stood out most was her personality. She was smart, charismatic, empathetic, nurturing, and full of love. She had a natural ability to connect with people, and that made her quite popular and beloved in the small town we lived in. In 2000, during our college years, our relationship became official. Our families were thrilled. They had always been close, and hearing that Melissa and I were dating brought them even closer. My mother and Melissa's mother were good friends, and my father often enjoyed discussing work matters with her mom. I always had a great relationship with her family. I was even the godfather at her older sister's wedding. Another important detail is that Melissa's father passed away when she was 7, but despite that, he remains a cherished figure in their family to this day. At the time, I truly believed there was nothing to worry about when it came to family relationships. At the time, my family consisted of me, my parents, and my 3 younger brothers. For better understanding, I'll list them as follows. My mother. My father. Isaac, my younger brother by 1 year. Louis, my younger brother by 3 years. Daniel, my younger brother by 4 years. On Melissa's side of the family, they were Tanya, Melissa's mother. Sophia, Melissa's older sister. Lily, Melissa's twin sister. Melissa, now my ex-wife. In 2003, Melissa and I graduated from college at the age of 22 and decided to get married that same year. I don't even need to say how excited our families were when they heard the news about our wedding. It was truly a very special moment for both of us. Everything about the wedding was simply perfect. From the venue and the food to the music, it was exactly what we had dreamed of. Shortly after the wedding, we moved out to start our life as a married couple. In the first few days, I noticed that Melissa seemed a little unsettled. At the time, she told me she was just stressed from all the wedding planning, but her uneasiness lasted no more than a day, and she quickly went back to being her usual self. A month after the wedding, something significant happened. Lily suddenly disappeared from the family's life. At the time, Lily was working as an accountant at a local bank, a job she had gotten through her mother's recommendation. We usually went out for drinks on Fridays after a long workweek, but one day she simply didn't show up at the bar we used to go to. At first, I didn't think much of it. But the following week, Melissa told me that Lily wouldn't be coming back. When I asked Melissa about it, she wouldn't say anything, so I decided to talk to her mother. When I asked Tanya, she told me Lily had been arrested the previous week. According to her, Lily had betrayed the entire family. She called her a horrible person who had stolen and ruined the family's reputation. Tanya said Lily's actions would deeply affect the lives of many people. What you're reading is only a part of what Tanya told me. I'd like to share more details, but the rest is too personal. The last thing I ever heard about Lily was that she had been sentenced to 13 years in prison that same year. Her entire family refused to visit her, and I was forbidden from contacting her. The rejection was so severe that none of them even attended her trial. They didn't want to be associated with her and completely cut ties after the verdict. The next 2 years were relatively peaceful. I started working as an accountant for a small company in town, while Melissa worked as a teacher for blind students. Our marriage was wonderful. Of course, we had our ups and downs, but nothing major. We were always a loving, communicative couple. Melissa's disability limited some aspects of our lives, but even so, we had a strong emotional and physical connection. Even though my job took up a lot of my time, I always tried to spend at least 3 hours a day with Melissa. We went out once a week, and the idea of starting a family became more and more present over time. In 2005, I had to go on a business trip with a few colleagues to close a deal that would benefit our company. The only person of real relevance in this story is a former classmate named Emma. I didn't have much of a relationship with her, our only interactions were work-related. After a few days, the deal was successfully finalized. To celebrate, my co-workers decided to go to a bar. The celebration went pretty much as you'd expect. Most of my colleagues ended up drunk. I, on the other hand, didn't reach that point. I just chatted with a few of them about various topics. After a while, I decided to head back to the hotel we were staying at. As I was leaving the bar, Emma bumped into me and we both fell to the ground. Like most of our colleagues, she was clearly drunk. I got up and tried to help her, but she was too unsteady to walk on her own. One of our co-workers suggested I take her back to the hotel, and I agreed. Supporting her with my arm, I walked her back. My plan was to drop her off at her door and leave, but in the end, I had to carry her all the way to her bed. I simply laid her down, and a few seconds later, I left and went to my room. The next day, we returned to our respective homes without any issues. 4 days after I got back from the business trip, I came home from work and noticed my parents' car and Tanya's parked outside my house. When I walked in, I found Melissa's mother, her older sister, and my parents in the living room. Everyone looked furious. Melissa was sitting on the couch crying. She was 4 weeks pregnant at the time. Before I had time to process the scene, Sophia slapped me hard across the face, followed by everyone shouting at me all at once. I asked why everyone was acting like that, and finally Melissa spoke. All she said was, "Why did you do it?" I asked what she meant, and that's when everyone started yelling at me, accusing me of cheating on Melissa during my business trip. I asked where the accusation had come from, and Tanya said Emma had contacted her. She claimed I had been having an emotional affair with her for some time, which supposedly became physical during the trip. Apparently, Emma had gone into great detail, making her lie seem very convincing. She also claimed I had said some really cruel things about Melissa, especially regarding her condition, among other things. I told them Emma was lying and that there was nothing to support what she was saying. But Sophia said they had talked to everyone who went on the trip with us, and they all confirmed they had seen me walking back to the hotel alone with Emma. That part is true, but only because no one else wanted to help me get her back to her room. I begged Melissa to believe me, but she told me she didn't want anything to do with me anymore and asked for a divorce. The yelling and insults continued until I was kicked out of the house. The following months were absolute hell. I was forced to quit my job when everyone found out what had happened. Since we lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone, you can imagine the amount of hatred I faced. People shouted insults at me, and in some cases, things even escalated to physical aggression. My parents told me I was a disgrace to the family. My brothers disowned me and insulted me, and Melissa's family did the same, completely cutting me off. I thought about reaching out to my friends, but they rejected me too. During that time, I started noticing that my brother Louis was making some suspicious comments about the situation. Later, I found out he was the one who had been comforting Melissa throughout the divorce. The divorce process lasted about a year, during which I wasn't allowed to have any contact with Melissa at all. Everything was handled through her lawyer. Finally, in 2006, the divorce was finalized. Because of how serious adultery was considered where we lived, I lost almost everything. In addition to having to pay alimony, I was also ordered to pay financial compensation, among other things. Thankfully, my lawyer managed to negotiate so I wouldn't have to pay alimony. But in the end, I still had to give up my house, my car, 80% of my savings, and a $160,000 compensation payment. Once the divorce was finalized, both my family and Melissa's family cut off all contact with me. The last thing I ever heard about them was that my brother Louis and Melissa had started a relationship. At that point, I had basically lost everything. My family, my friends, my reputation gone. No one wanted anything to do with me, which made it impossible to find a job. I was completely ostracized by everyone in that town. Life stopped making sense, and I seriously thought about ending it all. But in the end, I didn't have the courage to go through with it. Instead, I decided to sell what little I had left, gather some money, and finally leave that place behind. I moved to a city about 6 hours away from where I used to live. My goal was to get as far away as possible, so I moved to a town in northern Mexico. I eventually arrived in another state. At that time, I didn't have much money, so I did odd jobs to survive. A few months into my new life, I noticed that several local businesses needed help and guidance with taxes and audits. I saw this as an opportunity, so I started offering advice and consulting services related to tax filing and audit compliance. By 2007, I had managed to create a small but relatively successful financial consulting firm. However, I was still struggling emotionally. I had serious issues with trust and self-worth. Once I reached financial stability again, I finally had the means to start therapy, which truly helped me begin healing. In therapy, I tackled many issues: my relationships with my family, my friends, and my ex-wife. At the time, I still felt somewhat responsible for what had happened. Mainly, I felt like an idiot for not suspecting anything about Emma. I also spent a long time wondering why Emma had lied in the first place. Eventually, I was diagnosed with PTSD as a result of the trauma I experienced during the divorce. More seriously, I developed an anxiety disorder that severely affected my ability to socialize. I just couldn't form any kind of connection with people because I was constantly afraid of being betrayed again. It was a slow process, but I got through it. I came to understand that I wasn't at fault for what had happened. I started to heal and stopped obsessing over why Emma had lied. I was both physically and mentally healthy again. I started going to the gym, developed a love for gardening and kickboxing, and threw myself into my work. I even made a few new friends. And after a while, I felt confident enough to go out for drinks once in a while. The next 2 years were really good for me. My small business grew steadily, and money was no longer a concern. I wasn't rich or anything, but I earned enough to live comfortably. Emotionally, I was doing well. My trust issues weren't as bad, and my fear of building new relationships had slowly started to fade, though it hadn't completely disappeared. I met some amazing new friends who were incredibly understanding of my situation, and, most importantly, I was finally at peace with myself. 2009 was a big year. Thanks to my company's growth, I had to start hiring more staff, especially accountants. While going through the job applications, one in particular stood out. It was from someone named Lily. That caught my attention because it reminded me of my old friend, though at the time I assumed it was just a coincidence. Eventually, I had the interview with the applicant, and to my complete surprise, it was indeed the Lily I knew. We recognized each other instantly and were both silent for a moment. Honestly, it was awkward. After all, she was the twin sister of my ex-wife. Seeing her face brought back a wave of painful memories. After a few minutes, I continued the interview as normally as I could. And I have to admit, it was a good interview. Eventually, Lily secured one of the positions, and a few days later, she showed up to start working. Regardless of what had happened in the past, Lily was one of the most qualified candidates, and it would have been foolish not to hire someone with such strong experience and knowledge in the field. Besides, her resume didn't list any criminal record, so there was no legal issue in bringing her on board. In the beginning, communication between Lily and me was practically non-existent, strictly limited to work-related matters, including her interactions with other employees. During that time, Lily would just show up, do her job, and leave without speaking to anyone. This went on for a few months until a major project came up at the company, which meant more work and longer hours. I often stayed late to get ahead on pending tasks, and one evening Lily offered to help, which I accepted. Most of those overtime hours passed in silence, until one day, Lily nervously invited me out for a drink. At first, I had no intention of accepting, but I was under a lot of stress, and honestly, a drink didn't sound like a bad idea. The outing wasn't particularly memorable, but it was surprisingly pleasant to spend time with her. We mostly talked about work-related topics. Over time, Lily started to relax, and we gradually rebuilt a formal friendship, which slowly grew stronger. After work, we'd occasionally hang out, eat lunch together, and on Fridays, go out for drinks like we used to. On one of those bar nights, I decided to be open with her and told her everything that had happened between Melissa and me. Lily had previously asked how Melissa was doing, to which I'd only said we got divorced, without going into details. I told her the whole story about Emma and how everything unraveled during the divorce. Lily was shocked. I asked her whether a single lie was really enough to make both of our families cut me off like that. She said she didn't know all the details and couldn't say for sure if there was more behind their reaction. But she got visibly upset, wondering aloud how a single accusation could erase all the years I had spent with our families. She ended by saying she was there for me if I ever needed to talk again. Until then, my therapist had been the only person I'd ever opened up to about the divorce, so letting all that out lifted a huge weight from my shoulders. Overall, Lily was a fantastic addition to the company. She stood out and quickly rose through the ranks despite her past. But even so, I could tell something wasn't right with her. She still had trouble working as part of a team and connecting with others. During one of our bar nights, I gently asked if she was okay. She looked nervous and scared, so I apologized for asking but reminded her of what she'd told me when I opened up about my divorce, that I could count on her if I needed someone to talk to. I told her the same applied to her. A few days passed as usual, until one night, Lily finally opened up. She told me about her past and why she went to prison. To summarize, Lily used to work at the local bank in our hometown. Her duties included performing the annual initialization of the accounting system and working on budget allocations, items, and financial projects. Because she was highly efficient and capable, she was given a position with access to a large database containing customer information, things like account numbers, card details, and passwords. There was one other person at the bank with the same level of access. One day, the bank was flooded with complaints from angry customers claiming their savings accounts had been emptied or that they had no money left in their accounts. After hours of chaos, the bank confirmed that multiple accounts had indeed been drained. With no immediate fix, they were forced to freeze access to all accounts, what's known in Mexico as a corralito, where nobody can withdraw or move money for several days, creating major problems. Upon investigation, it was discovered that a criminal group, likely tied to a cartel, had somehow gained access to the database and used the information to empty several accounts. The bank managed to recover some of the stolen funds, but not all. Most of the culprits were arrested within 2 days, but a few managed to escape. Lily was taken into custody during the investigation. Since only 2 people had access to the database, Lily and her colleague, they became the main suspects. However, her co-worker mysteriously resigned a few days before the breach and disappeared. The criminals claimed someone inside the bank had given them access but said they didn't know who it was, since communication was handled by a third party who had evaded capture. The investigation also concluded that the operation must have been guided by someone with insider knowledge of the bank's systems. Based on this and other circumstantial evidence, Lily was accused of helping the criminals. In the end, she was found guilty, though it's likely she was just a scapegoat to close the case, which wouldn't be surprising given the track record of the Mexican justice system in these types of cases. She went on to explain how her family abandoned her throughout the ordeal. Her mother, in particular, never believed in her innocence. They already had a strained relationship, and this only made things worse. Tanya, Melissa and Lily's older sister, told her she had destroyed both the family's reputation and the lives of those who lost their savings. When Lily was finally sentenced, her mother visited her one last time just to say they never wanted to see her again. Lily told her she was innocent, to which her mother coldly replied, "If they found you guilty, there must be a reason, right?" Shortly after that, the entire family cut her off, leaving her utterly devastated. When she finished her story, I immediately began to apologize for not being there for her when she needed me. She told me not to feel guilty because even if I had tried to reach out, Tanya wouldn't have allowed it. Tanya was the only one permitted to visit Lily in prison, and she blocked all other forms of communication, including letters and phone calls. After a few minutes of silence, I asked Lily how she eventually got out of prison. She told me that after 5 years, one of the people who had initially escaped was finally caught. That person turned out to be the one who had contacted the bank insider. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he agreed to give detailed testimony about the fraud and how it was carried out. His statements confirmed that Lily's former co-worker was the one who had helped the group. Combined with the complete lack of solid evidence against Lily, it was determined that there was no reason for her to remain in prison. She was released, and her criminal record was expunged. She said that after her release, she tried to contact her family, but in the end, she only managed to speak with her mother, who once again refused any relationship with her. The same thing happened with her friends, who rejected her. She told me about her attempts to get a job, but news of what had happened at her previous workplace prevented her from securing a position in her hometown or neighboring cities. Eventually, Lily left town, as she had no reason to stay. After that, she spent a few months job hunting and eventually ended up at my company. She said that because of everything she went through, she had a hard time connecting with others, had major trust issues, and suffered from constant nightmares due to her time in prison. At that moment, I felt deeply sorry for her. She had been through so much things that would leave lasting trauma on anyone. I recommended that she start therapy to help her deal with everything, offering to cover all the costs as a way to apologize for my absence when she needed us most. She initially refused, but after some persistence, she agreed. She started seeing the same therapist I was seeing and asked me to accompany her to the sessions. She was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, trust issues, and sleep disturbances. In the beginning, I used to wait for her outside while she had her individual sessions. But eventually, she asked me to join her during the sessions, and I agreed. The therapist prescribed some antidepressants, and she began attending therapy twice a week. Lily also joined a recovery program for conscientious objectors who had served time in prison. On my end, the therapist gave me various guidelines to help support Lily in her recovery. Although her progress was slow, I can say that therapy truly helped. Her fear of interacting with others began to fade to the point where she was making new friends. Her anxiety and trust issues were no longer a major concern. Overall, she was changing for the better. We even started going to the gym together, and Lily began taking kickboxing classes with me. We'd even have friendly sparring matches sometimes. Then came 2012. During that time, Lily and I grew closer and closer. Professionally, we had a great relationship. Lily had become my right hand at the company. Personally, we were also doing great. We were spending more and more time together, going out for drinks or long walks, which became part of our routine. We supported each other through our therapies. As time went by, I realized I had developed feelings for Lily. I know what you might be thinking right now. You fell in love with the twin sister of the woman who left you? For a while, the idea of getting into another relationship scared me because of my experience with Melissa. I was afraid my fear was clouding my judgment, or that my trust issues would ruin any chance at love. I also feared that the reason I was starting to like Lily was that, subconsciously, I was trying to get back with my ex, and considering the two looked nearly identical, you can probably see why I'd think that. And by nearly identical, I mean only in appearance. They were completely different in personality, behavior, style, and more. After discussing my doubts with my therapist and some friends, I was able to confirm that I truly was falling for Lily, not for how she looked, but for who she was. I decided to wait for our next night out at the bar to confess my feelings. I waited until we were leaving, and then I told her how I felt. I explained how special I felt when I was around her and how all I wanted was to spend time with her. Lily stayed quiet for a few minutes, then started to cry a little and asked me if I was sure about what I was saying. At that moment, I thought I had ruined everything and was just waiting to be rejected. I reaffirmed my feelings for her, at which point she stepped back a little, but then, after a few seconds, she hugged me. Through her sobs, she confessed that she felt the same way. She said she had started developing feelings for me after seeing how much I cared for her and how much I looked after her. She said I was the first person in a long time who had truly cared for her, the only one who had supported her when she needed it most, the only one who understood her. She said that when she was with me, she didn't feel alone. That when she was with me, she could believe that a good life was possible. That I gave her a reason to keep going. That I made her feel loved. At this point, I was crying too. Lily kept crying while holding me. She said she hadn't said anything before because she was scared that I wouldn't love her because of what had happened with her sister, scared that I wouldn't love her because of her issues, scared that I would push her away, scared of being alone again. I held her close and promised I'd be by her side no matter what. Lily, in turn, promised to be by mine through everything. From that moment on, Lily and I began our relationship. At first, it was a bit complicated due to the emotional baggage we both carried, especially our trust issues and fear of betrayal. But we agreed not to let our past get in the way of our happiness. It was a slow process, with some tense moments, but we managed to build a strong bond. That bond gave us the clarity and strength to take the final steps toward healing. Eventually, Lily and I got married in early 2015. We both decided it would be best to keep it small, so we only invited our closest friends. And in case you're wondering, no, we didn't invite our families. The idea was discussed and evaluated with our therapist, but in the end, we chose not to invite them. Given everything that had happened, it just didn't make sense. The wedding took place on a beautiful beach. The sound of the waves and the sunset created such a special and unique atmosphere. A total of 15 people attended, just close friends, and even our therapist came with his wife. One of the best memories I have from that day is seeing Lily walking down the aisle. Seeing her in her wedding dress is something I will never forget. But the moment I'll carry in my heart forever was seeing her face as I slipped the ring onto her finger, knowing everything we had gone through to reach that moment. Seeing Lily's beautiful smile. I simply can't describe in words how that made me feel. A few weeks after the wedding, we found out Lily was pregnant, a honeymoon baby. I admit we were both pretty nervous at first, but as the days passed, the nerves turned into excitement and joy. We saw the pregnancy as the beginning of a new chapter in our lives together. At the end of 2015, Lily gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, whom I'll call Alba. Fortunately, the hospital allowed skin-to-skin contact right after the delivery. Holding my baby was an unforgettable experience, a moment of pure connection as I met my daughter. Seeing her in my wife's arms. I don't even have words to explain how I felt. As you can imagine, Alba's arrival brought a huge change to our lives, both personally and socially. Our friends came by nearly every day to meet her. The first few months were tough. Anyone who's had or taken care of a newborn knows how much time and attention they require. It's normal to feel overwhelmed or exhausted. The crying, the sleepless nights, preparing bottles at 4 a.m. It was a demanding period, but we managed to get through it well. We gave Alba all the love and care we had, despite the physical and mental exhaustion. As the years went by, Lily and I worked hard to ensure Alba had a great upbringing from day one. We committed to creating a loving, respectful, and safe environment so she could thrive. Even though we both worked, we made it a priority to spend time with our little girl. And that brings us to the present day. Today, I can proudly say I'm the father of a beautiful 7-year-old girl and married to the most incredible woman I could have ever hoped for. As you've probably gathered from my story, it hasn't been an easy journey, there have been ups and downs over the years. But I wouldn't change a thing. I have amazing people by my side, and I couldn't ask for anything more. And in case you're wondering, yes, there's more to the story. Since last year, both Lily and I have reconnected with our families. I didn't bring that up earlier because I feel like this post is already long enough. But I'm truly thankful for the support my original post received even though it was deleted, and I'd love to share what happened with our families and where things stand now. So I hope this post stays up long enough for me to update it with everything that's happened in 2022 and 2023.
Reddit Relics comment. Hey everyone, what an incredible story, right? What strikes me the most about this post is how life can take unexpected turns, and how a single lie can cause so much damage. Just imagine losing everything and everyone around you because of a false accusation. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of truth, and how careful we should be before judging others, without knowing the full story. Our OP showed an incredible amount of resilience. He went through extremely difficult times, was rejected by his family, lost his job, and the trust of those he loved. And yet, he managed to rebuild his life and overcome his trauma. That just goes to show that even in the face of adversity, it's possible to find a path to healing and success. And then there's the reunion with Lily, which adds an extra emotional layer to the story. Who would have thought they'd cross paths again, and that she would play such an important role in this new chapter of his life? It's a beautiful example of how people can change, and how we should be open to giving second chances. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever gone through something similar? Or do you know someone who has? Do you think you'd be able to forgive and move forward like he did? Let me know in the comments. I love reading what you have to say and replying to everyone. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Oh, and share it with your friends too, so more people can be inspired by these amazing stories. Until next time, folks, stay strong, and remember, even in the darkest moments, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel.